It is a great pleasure to welcome Roger Bamber. Roger has traveled from the British Museum in London for this morning, and we'll talk about Joel's role in his life with sea spiders.
Good morning, and thank you, Jim and the Hedgepeth family, for inviting me, which is very humbling, to do a short homage to Joel in the context of sea spiders, and I think representing that tiny community in the world of pycnogonid researchers, which remains tiny. This, in some ways, is the world of sea spiders. So there are these sea spiders. I've got a pointer thing. You know what these are, don't you? I don't know what they're doing, by the way, or why there's a marshmallow on its nose, but it's another story. For habitat, possibly their food, there they are having a good time, and there's Joel, and that sums it up in many ways, if one could sum it up in one slide. But I'll try and do some more. To assess the role of Joel in pycnogonid research, information, whatever, knowledge, is very hard. It's impossible to overestimate, in my opinion. Those of you who know all about pycnogonids can go to sleep because you'll have heard of this before. Those that don't, shame on you. Sea pycnogonids, from the Greek, dense knees, which I think is a wonderful name. Pycnogonids are, well, to use Joel's own words, why not? An anomalous class or subphylum of marine arthropods, unknown except by name to most zoologists. They're of no economic importance to man and of little discernible significance in the natural order of things. That's not a little jokey aside, that's in one of his papers. And I think it's absolutely right. In fact, I normally comment that if you removed every pycnogonid from the world, there are 6 animals that will suffer, and I regularly correspond with the other 5. In 1939, a paper appeared, and that is its title, in the American Midland Naturalist by one Joel Hedgepeth, about pycnogonids. And in the following 52 years, 65 papers appeared by this same author, one way or another, talking about pycnogonids. As one legacy of that canon of work, he describes 66 new species, 13 new genera. I'm taking hints here, obviously. 2 new families, and just to show off, 1 new order of pycnogonids, which are still valid today. And you can check my wonderful website to add them all up yourself if you want to. This, by the way, is pycnogonids doing naughty things in the background. For those who don't know what pycnogonids are, that's what the photographs are there for. It's better than pictures of me. During this great canon of work, there are a few momentous occasions, and the late 40s is undoubtedly one where this sequence of papers came out. The 47 paper, the first time somebody had particularly addressed the phylogeny evolutionary significance, to use the words of the title, of the group sensibly, tried to make sense out of it with wonderful diatribe, literature, etc. And then following that, the papers, as you see, the large papers, reviewing a lot of survey work, collection material, which were definitive to the subsequent canon of pycnogonid research, undoubtedly. Another momentous date was 1988, when Joel wrote this letter to me. Oh, you spotted that, have you? Yeah. It's memorable that it starts, "Dear Sir or Madam." There are a couple of hermaphrodite pycnogonids, in fact. But that began an association of which I'm very pleased. It was a strange, mostly by correspondence. It was odd. It wasn't really a dialogue. It was sort of 2 parallel monologues. Because I would write to Joel saying, "Oh, and by the way, what about blah, 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 blah?" And then eventually I get a reply as if I'd never written anything, bearing no relation to what I'd said, discussing something entirely different, and perhaps asking me for feedback, which I would then duly give him. And the next letter was as if we'd only just started again. But as we just heard, perhaps the intervening letters were going to somebody else. It was still a pleasure, I must say. If you're a totally sad person, and some say that pycnogonid researchers probably are, You could sit down and look at the number of papers published relating to Pycnogonids every year since Dot. OK, Dot's a bit big here because I got bored at the left-hand end with chaps like Latreille, Cuvier, Linnaeus and so on. But that's it. And you'll see there's a biggish peak to the right, which is much more interest, so we'll have a look at that. The red dots are those by this chap called Hedgepeth. The blue are by the opposing team called the Rest of the World. But hopefully you'll notice this is the late 40s era I was telling you about. And we've gone from something around 10 a year. There's a sudden significant increase to about 25 a year. And I believe that is a significant increase. That is a reflection of the significance and the importance of the papers Joel was publishing and the collaboration in which he was indulging with other Pycnogonid researchers. This is not the standard increase in publications going on or researchers. There's a golden rule of genetics that there are only ever 6 people in the world working on Pycnogonids. And notes that at the end, my buttons, oh, there we go, we've suddenly given up again. This is our fault, not Joel's. This is ridiculous. We need him back desperately. I think that is actually relevant. What is great about these papers, as most of you probably already know, is yes, there's wonderful, profound, groundbreaking science there, which gives us all things on which to build. They're also remarkably good literature. They're a delight to read. If there's anybody here who doesn't actually like Pycnogonids, that's why I haven't got a gun or anything, read them anyway, because they are just great fun. I've just got a couple of examples. This was on Pycnogonid phylogeny. There is no easily discernible evolutionary progression. Attempts to construct such family trees inevitably produce interlocking and anastomosing shrubbery. That's beautiful. Not only is it beautiful, it's actually right. It explains the problem very well in language I'm not allowed to write anymore. I'm so jealous of that. You can't write prose these days in science. You can't say something is normal unless it goes brackets P equals something, you know. What is that all about? Another example of the genus Indeus. This is an Indeus, in fact. The unhappy history of this generic name is marked by several impassioned polemics and much spilling of ink. Absolutely right. It's been a ridiculous problem issue, which you don't need to go into, but read that paper and you'll find out all about it. But this is a lovely way of saying it. And it's a delight to read. I had a longer tract I was going to bore you by standing and reading out. Unfortunately, it's somewhere in the realms of British Airways by now. It was left on the plane. But I have this delightful idea that there's some stewardess somewhere reading it and thinking, wow, I must read this chap's work, because she will. It's just, it's great. What did other Pycnogonid workers think of Joel? Well, the commemoration has been going on for a while. There is a family named after him. That's not a picture of it, by the way. That's another Pycnogonid entirely. I'm sorry. There are 2 genera. No, this is a bit confusing, you'd have thought. They are actually in different families, but you have to remember which is which. And there are still 5 species named after him in 5 genera and 4 families. I haven't got any named after me. Well, I do have a parasitic copepod, but I don't think it really compares. But yes, that's... All right, and a strange... I won't go to the ostracod at all, it's just disgusting. I'd rather have a Pycnogonid. Yes, there's always been respect for him and his work by his co-workers, which culminated, as you've already heard, in the 1976 Festschrift at the Linnaeus Society of London, which to this day is the only international meeting there's ever been about Pycnogonids. Alan Child actually emailed me, no he didn't, he wrote to me about 7 years ago and said we should hold another meeting and we could do it in a telephone box. Because, as you've already heard, there's only 6 of us ever. There were actually more than 6 this meeting, but some of them I think were sort of outside as you snuck in or whatever. But it was for Joel. That's what the meeting was all about in London. Organised by our late and good friend Bill Fryer, if you've already heard, who, in his introduction, said every paper in this volume owes something to Joel Hedgepeth's work, and some owe a great deal, for his writings have touched upon almost every aspect of Pycnogonid biology. And pertinently, it would not be extravagant to claim there is no serious student of the group who has not been influenced by his work. not merely through the practical necessity of studying his conclusions and data, but also by an encounter with that literary elegance and humour which is so rare in contemporary zoological literature, which is what I just said, only he says it's better. In fact, the work he put into the Festschrift was again acknowledged by Bill, who pointed out that in the proceedings, the volume to which he's referring, 2 of the papers had Joel as an author. His own Festschrift. That's just showing off, I think. The latest paper I published on pycnogonids, okay, that's why I know about it, because I wrote it. In the acknowledgements, happens to say I'm indebted to the work of. And I wrote that before I knew this meeting was going on, so this is not invented just for this, honestly. Honestly. That was actually updating of phylogeny, and 3 key inputs to the history of phylogeny. One was Joel, no question at all, and probably always will be. To drift into things a little more anecdotal, those of you paying attention have noticed that pycnogonids tend to have 8 legs, except for the old one, which has a few more. In fact, there's about 6 that have a few more. This is the 10-legged Pentapycnon gaer. These are real things, they're not mutations. They tend to be similar to existing 8-legged genera, and so they get these pathetically naive names. Pentapycnon, it's got 5 pairs of legs. You know, a lot of thought's got into that, hasn't it? No. No is the answer, sorry. There's Pentanymphon antarcticum, which is quite common. I could wait while you count the legs, and then I'll tell you one's broken. 5 pairs of legs. Joel and Bill Fry were sitting around doing this Antarctic review and thinking, wouldn't it be good to get a 12-legged nymphon? Because then we can call it Sexa nymphon. In fact, the plan was Sexa nymphon erotica. I don't have a photograph, but that's the holotype of what actually became Mirabilis, which is beautiful, not erotic. So this is the only case I know to date of a generic name being invented before the animal had been found. But they did it, and that is the beast. That's quite rare, but that's just showing off. Again, he can. In 1954, he wrote a paper which is relevant to this place because it was done from the scripts pertaining to the Trans-Pacific Expedition in 1953. And this is a copy he actually sent to me. You've heard earlier about his potentially difficulties with mathematics. Well, this will refute that, because he compared the expedition's results with those of the Swedish expedition in 1947-48 in the same area, with, as he calls it, detailed statistical analysis. And you can see from this table that the American expedition had 1/3 as many successful dredge hauls, was out at sea for 1/3 of the amount of time, and yet found exactly the same number of pycnogonids, to wit, 1. And by this detailed analysis, he has demonstrated a trebling of the density of pycnogonids in the Pacific in that short time. And the typing he put on the top of the copy sent to me in relation to a review article I just done with Francois Arnaud was, I find no mention of productivity in this paper. Sad, many have told me this is my finest paper. What's actually significant is it's still the only paper I know of that deals with productivity in pycnogonids. And may always be so, I don't know. We will go on saying year after year, that is still the only Joel Hedgepeth, and thank God he was there. And we are very grateful to what he did, without which we couldn't do what we do now. Thank you.